We're back now with the From the Newsroom segment podcast here with Paul Leighton, Dustin Luca ordinarily with us, but he's off, as they say, on assignment. Paul, welcome back. You guys are a very busy group.
Thank you, Rick. Yeah, it's good to be with you. And yeah, the good thing is there's always something new to talk about whenever we do this.
Oh, there's one thing I forgot to ask you in our pregame warm-up, so I'll ask you now. Okay. It seems you have an update on Varian, the decontamination procedure again. Would you be able to talk about that?
Yes, sure. There's a public meeting coming up in a couple of weeks on this, and that's one thing that Varian has been doing. They're required to hold these public meetings every so often to update people. So there's another one coming up at Beverly High School. I think it's on June 7th. And so this one is, they will let people know exactly what their new strategies are to clean up. This is the place where there's contamination on the ground. They're worried about it getting into the neighborhood. It's been going on for 30 years, but now there's been more of a crackdown on what they're doing, and they're coming up with new techniques like superheating the ground, to vaporize the chemicals. So this is a chance for people to see exactly what they're doing.
It's amazing that it goes on. I know that Salem News has been covering so many different things, Paul, and you primarily have the Beverly coverage area, and kind of some interesting news coming out of Beverly City Hall, or from Beverly City Hall, or about Beverly City Hall.
Yes, all three, Rick. There was a public meeting the other night at City Hall about the city's plan to renovate the building. And so basically they're going to do, it could be, I think, up to a $25 million renovation project at City Hall, which is, a historic building built in the 19th century. And it's been the city of town hall for, more than 100 years. And it hasn't really been updated on the inside since the 1930s. So the city has hired an architectural firm, and they presented the other night with their plans. The big thing is, they can make City Hall bigger because the police station used to be located in like an addition to the building. It's actually attached to City Hall. Police moved out a couple of years ago into the new police station on Elliott Street. So there's this extra space now that's available. And so the architect said, we can either, renovate that police station space and add another story to it, or they can knock it down and build a new addition on the back of City Hall. So, either way, it's going to have more space, and that will enable the city to bring back departments that are located elsewhere because of lack of space. Like the health department is at the senior center. The municipal inspections department is at the GAR hall down the street. So everybody will be able to come back into a new, bigger, more modernized City Hall, which is good. It won't, the plan is to start it next spring. It's going to take a couple of years. And in the meantime, City Hall, all the people who work there are going to have to move out. And the plan is to move into this whole other project where the city is looking to take by eminent domain the Family Dollar building down the street on Cabot Street. And so City Hall would move into that building for a couple of years while the renovations are being done.
It sounds complicated, and it's interesting because we live in such a historic part of the United States that these buildings are beginning to show their age in so many ways. Gloucester is going through a similar process. I don't think there's any plans to renovate Gloucester City Hall, but they had a little fire, and so then they clean the whole thing up, and they've got offices scattered all over the city.
Yeah.
So it can't be the greatest thing for for residents to have to go to that. So I know you'll keep your eye on that, and looking forward to seeing how that. So what's the next step? Is this thing definitely a go?
Yes, it's gonna, the city council approved money a couple of weeks ago for like this initial phase of it. And the city has hired this architectural firm to do a study of the different options. They've hired like a project manager. So it's it's definitely going to happen. Which I think is good. It's funny you point that out because one of the architects was saying that the electrical system in City Hall is so old that some employees, they have to turn off the computer before they use the microwave, or else they're like blow the system. So these are the things that they're dealing with.
Yeah, you got that on one end of the spectrum, and you got AI on the other end of the spectrum.
Yeah.
So what is it, Chat GPT or whatever? Oh my goodness.
Yeah, that's a
Well,
whole other story.
some more interesting news coming out of Beverly. The elections are several months away. And Mayor Mike Cahill has been the incumbent for quite a while without a lot of competition. He had one competitor who dropped out. Now apparently there are two more who are at least thinking about or have taken out papers.
Yes, just the other day, a resident, Jamie Zarella, took out nomination papers to run for mayor, and I spoke with him, and he's the owner of Big Jim's Auto Body in Beverly. It's a family-run business that his father ran for years, and he has never run for office before. He hasn't been involved in local politics that much, and he just said he wants to, give it a try. He said a lot of people spend a lot of time complaining, and you see a lot of stuff on social media, and he decided to do something about it. I give people credit for doing that. There's another candidate who we had a story on a couple of weeks ago, is sort of the same thing. He's never run for office before, and has not been involved in local politics, but he's going to run. And I'm just looking up his name now because I can't remember his name, but he lives in Raleigh side in Beverly. And but anyway, so that as long as they return, they need to get 100 signatures and bring them back to City Hall to officially get on the ballot. But if they do, that there would be at least 3 people, including the incumbent, Mike Cahill, running for mayor.
Well, I'll link to the story, so we'll have his name up there.
There you go. Yeah, his name is Philip Venezia is the other candidate.
Yeah, it is interesting how people decide that, they want to do something. And I applaud that. I think one of the things, and this is totally off subject, Paul, but one of the things I get annoyed with, especially out of Washington, is that so many of those people get elected to get reelected. That's their purpose in life, is to get reelected. Whereas I would like to see, and I've espoused this several times about school systems and so on. It'd be nice if we had some kind of a service recommendation or a service requirement for people, public service, that is, like for example, the Israeli model. You've got to spend a year or 2 years in service. Doesn't have to be in the military, but in service. And I think that might tamper down things in this country a little bit when one person has to see how another person lives. And you got to help.
No, I think that's a good idea. That's a good idea. Well, I always say to people from covering all these public meetings for years, and I understand that people are busy, and I always say, before I became a reporter, I didn't go to City Hall, City Council meetings either, so I'm not blaming anybody. I do it because it's my job. But if a group of people show up, doesn't even need to be a big group. If 10 people show up on a certain issue and speak, it usually will have an impact because it's so unusual. Some of the bigger issues, you might get 100 people, a couple hundred, if it's something's really controversial once in a while, but most of the time, like for these City Hall renovations the other night, the city's going to spend $25 in taxpayer money. So, okay, you can come down and say what you want to see in the new City Hall. And there were only about 30 people there, and about 7 people spoke. So I guess the point is, and I know you said we all get kind of frustrated because we see on Facebook and social media about all the complaining, and it's sort of like, Jamie Zarella said, this new candidate for mayor. Well, you can do something. You don't have to run for mayor, but you can show up in a meeting.
That's a great point, Paul. I'm glad you made that as a reporter, because when I was a teacher, we used to get a lot of complaints about the union, the contract, this kind of thing. And I tried not to do that because although I paid my dues, I wasn't an active member. And I feel the same way about city government. I don't think I'm going to sit here and complain unless I do go to these meetings and participate, because that's a great point that you brought up, that you don't have to have a large number of people to make an impact. That's very important.
Yeah, no, I mean, you see these, hundreds of comments on a local Facebook page, and what if those, 100 people were in City Hall the next night talking?
Yeah.
I know it's, I don't know if people don't, I don't know. It's a matter of, it's sort of like in the Salem election for mayor, which Dustin did a great job of covering, but the turnout was what, 25% or something?
Yeah, that was strange.
And, I mean, I'm used to seeing low turnouts in local elections. It's unfortunate, but it happens. But that one is in, Salem, where, you're looking to pick a successor to, somebody who's been the mayor for a long time, and Kim Driscoll. That was a big, important election, and it's relatively few people are deciding.
Yeah, and two very qualified people.
Yeah,
vying
yeah,
for the job. Yeah.
yeah,
You're right. That was very interesting. Should point out, I do want to, and this isn't particularly speaking to your coverage, but maybe more to the newspaper's coverage, in the fact that you have a limited staff and you have such a vast geographical area to cover. Dustin Luca right now seemingly wrapped up at it. What am I trying in
yeah,
law? He's
yeah, in the
all these
courts, yeah,
trials and courts. Yeah, and that's a full-time job. And then of course, Caroline and someone else was working over in Danvers
right.
on the St. John's Prep thing. And I wonder in your travels, Paul, um, this squatting thing, I know it's happened in other North Shore schools. It was, I think, in Gloucester and Manchester, Essex, a few weeks ago, if not a month or so ago. The St. John's Prep incident took on kind of a bigger story because of the fact that a firearm was discharged
Mm.
on campus, and that brought a tremendous response. In terms of coverage, how do you do it? I mean, you who makes the assignments, Paul, and how do you figure out what's the top story of the day? And some days it's probably like, okay, what do I do? You're twiddling your thumbs. Other days you don't have enough hands.
Right, right. No, totally. Well, it's funny because we all, work from home a lot, as you can see that I'm doing right now. But that day, what was it on Monday? I was in the office in Danvers, which I don't go into very often because we just welcomed a new reporter who just started actually. And so we heard about it when we were in the office, and the editor is John Castelluccio. So he, coordinates the coverage, but actually, Jill Harmasinski, who works for our sister paper, the Eagle Tribune, she lives in Danvers. She used to work at the Salem News. So she responded to the, to St. John's Prep. And then Caroline, Enos, who covers Danvers, was out on some other assignment, but she went over there too. And our new reporter, Michael McHugh, was working the phones and looking at social media. I actually wasn't involved in the coverage that day. So we did have at least 3 people, and we had a photographer, go over there too. So when a big story like that, we try to respond as much as we can. But overall, we are spread thin. We've talked in the past a lot. Local newspapers have been struggling for years across the country. Many of them have closed, and we're trying to cover 12 to 13 communities, and with basically 4 people.
Yes.
So we have to pick our spots. We've concentrated on what we call our big 4, Salem, Beverly, Peabody, and Danvers, where we kind of keep track of the day-to-day stuff, and then we need to pick and choose in the outlying towns for what we cover.
The other thing I want to ask you about, Paul, and again, just general information for me, learning about how you do things. As sports guys, we dabble in news, but Bill and I are primarily sports guys. We're very careful in who we interview in terms of kids. We try to make sure we shoot for seniors who are over 18. If there's others, we go through the coaches, the ADs, and sometimes they send us through the parents. When you cover a story, and I don't know if you ever have covered a story like that of the prep, there are you see, especially with the news, the TV station, the TV news, they've got microphones in kids' faces, just coming out of the building or just mulling around buses or whatever. Is there a paper policy? I shouldn't put it that way, but an organizational policy on how to do that?
That's a great question. I don't believe we have a policy like that. I think it's up to the judgment of the reporter. And you're right. I remember when I first started and first got to know you, Rick, back in sports and at the old, Beverly Times. And when I first started there, we didn't even interview, high school.
Right.
It's because we thought it was putting too much pressure. That really seems kind of outdated now. And now, of course, all the newspapers do. But I think in this situation, we would. I know we would go up to these students and ask them what they think. But I think you do use your judgment. If it's a young kid and they say something that you think, maybe they shouldn't say, and you would use your judgment on what you would use. And if it was, say, an elementary school, we wouldn't go up to, a 10-year-old kid and ask them what they're thinking unless their parent was there or a teacher or so forth. So But yeah, it is pretty much up to the judgment of the reporter.
One thing I've noticed that's changed is due to social media, these kids are so experienced now in front of a camera and a microphone, especially the high school kids. And
That's a great point. Yeah, yeah.
I had many years ago, I was interviewing a captain of a team, and she is on a roll, honor student, the AP, the whole 9 yards of contributes to the community, takes care of people, does wonderful things. And the interview was so bad because she was doing nothing but trashing her opponent.
Really?
And I said, well, thank you very much. This has been fun, but I can't use this.
That is funny. No, I always think when I hear, say, a high school athlete or sometimes even younger, you'll see, like on the Little League World Series and a 12-year-old is interviewed and they'll sound they'll say the same sorts of things that a professional athlete will say because they've heard them and they sort of mimic them. Well, I just want to credit all my teammates. I couldn't do without them, which is really, it's great how they do it. But to your point that there's so much exposure to media and that I think, younger people are more accustomed to this now.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. Well, Paul, we'll do this again in a couple of weeks. Hopefully Dustin will be available as well. Anything else you want to mention about the coverage, about stuff coming up? Of course, Memorial Day weekend coming up. I know that the papers have been putting in the Salem News, Newburyport paper, the Gloucester paper, all the events happening on the weekend. Anything else that you might want to mention?
Yeah, I'm trying to think. I don't think there's anything that big coming up. I know in Beverly, they actually, they had their Memorial Day festivities this past weekend. They had what they call the, Warrior Weekend, where at the high school, they brought in tanks and, howitzers and Apache helicopters. And they also had booths set up for veterans for how they could get benefits or for young people who wanted to enlist. So that was kind of a new approach. In Beverly, they're actually not going to have the parade that they've had for years on Memorial Day. They did this event instead, and they did it a week ahead because the veterans director said a lot of cities and towns sort of compete for people and equipment, so forth, to participate in their parade. So that was a little bit different. But
the other aspect of Memorial Day is that there are many veterans who don't like the idea of celebrating and having parties because it's in memoriam. On the other hand, my personal experience, having been in the service, my dad, we were both in the service during the Vietnam War. I didn't go to Vietnam, but he was also an Iwo Jima survivor. I've got his Marine picture up here.
Wow.
And his thing for Memorial Day was that he would honor, his comrades, but he felt because of what they did, especially in World War II, that you should party. We want to party because we did what we were supposed to do. We ultimate sacrifice for so many people, honor them, but go ahead and celebrate the fact that these people did live and they did do wonderful, wonderful things for us. But whatever any veteran wants to think or do about it, I certainly respect, because
Right.
especially those who volunteered, but all of them. It is a day of remembrance, but it's also I guess this is the other part is the advertising aspect and how they bastardize it in terms of it was the unofficial first day of summer. I guess they would.
Oh, right.
That's kind of have a complaint there, but
no, I agree with you. Well, I know when my daughters were younger, I would always make an attempt either on Memorial Day or Veterans Day or both to take them to these events, and just so that they were aware.
Yes.
And that's why I liked them. I kind of but I agree with you, and that's what the veteran services director in Beverly said, that about the parade, just what you said, that some veterans don't like that idea of quote unquote celebrating, but I think people do have different ideas. So but, there are a lot of events to pick and choose from across the North Shore, which is good.
Part of my problem is I'm Irish, and so I believe in Irish funerals. Let's celebrate the
Me
fact
too.
that the deceased lived.
Yeah, exactly.
But again, no disrespect intended. I have a neighbor across the street who is debilitated because of Agent Orange, and I cannot imagine how difficult it is for some of these people. Plus the fact, one more thing, Paul, a lot of these guys were kids when they're involved in combat, and the PTSD thing, when you see something you can't unsee, it kind of stays with you forever.
Yeah, totally. Well, and from we're of the age, but the Vietnam veterans didn't have the greatest experience coming home. And, that I think has changed a little bit over the years as they get older. But, the Vietnam era vets, which are more like around our age, Rick, they're like the World War II vets of our youth. You know what I mean? Now it's and so they're getting to an age where I think, any type of recognition is, I think is great for them.
Agreed. Okay, Paul, I appreciate it. We'll see you in a couple of weeks.
All right. Sounds good. Thank you, Rick.